The introduction of Busting Loose from a Money Game by Robert Scheinfeld sets the stage for a radical shift in how you think about money, success, and reality itself. It challenges deeply held beliefs about money and reveals that much of what you've accepted as obvious truth about wealth is actually a made-up game you've been taught to play and lose. The Money Game, a trap with invisible rules. Scheinfeld starts by telling readers that everyone has been unconsciously playing the money game from early on. This game includes all the beliefs, habits, and rules society teaches about money. Ideas like, you must work hard to earn money. Money is scarce. You have to budget, save, invest, and fight for survival. These rules may feel normal and logical, but they form a system that is rigged against you. If you follow them, no matter how well, you will still feel trapped, stressed, or limited. In other words, the system makes you better and better at playing a game you cannot win. This book is not just about money. Even though the title mentions money, the introduction makes it clear that the book is really about something much deeper. It's about your relationship with limitation and abundance, and how your beliefs shape your experience of life itself. Money is used as a practical example because financial concerns are universal and strongly felt, but the ideas apply to every part of life. Money as an illusion, a game you can stop playing. Scheinfeld argues that money and financial scarcity are not independent realities. They're constructs created by your thinking and reinforced by collective belief. The introduction invites you to see money not as a limited resource that controls you, but as a game you were born into and can choose to leave entirely. Once you see the money rules as optional and artificial, you stop giving them power, and that's when freedom begins. What busting loose really means. The book introduces two phases of human experience. Phase 1, the money game. This phase involves accepting the traditional rules of money and living within limitations, struggle, fear, competition, scarcity, and effort. Phase 2, busting loose. This is the transition to a new type of awareness, where you begin to recognize yourself as the creator of your reality, not a victim of outside forces. Money becomes a non-issue, and abundance flows without the old struggle. The introduction makes it clear this shift is possible, not mystical or theoretical, and sets up the rest of the book to show you how to navigate it. Your beliefs shape your reality. One of the core points in the introduction is that your beliefs about money are not neutral facts. They're powerful creators. Belief in scarcity creates financial anxiety. Belief that money controls life creates stress and struggle. Belief in limitation keeps you playing the game. The book promises that by understanding and releasing these beliefs, you can create a radically different reality, one filled with ease, abundance, and freedom. Promise of transformation. Scheinfeld assures readers that this is more than philosophy. It's a transformational process. With the tools and insights he shares, you can stop reacting to money challenges. Stop worrying about bills, budgets, or financial scarcity. Live from a place of trust and creative power. Make money a total non-issue in your life. Importantly, the introduction emphasizes that this transformation impacts all areas of life, not just your finances, because your underlying beliefs also shape relationships, health, creativity, and purpose. The introduction to Busting Loose from the Money Game invites you to 1. See the game you've been playing clearly. 2. Question the rules you took for granted. 3. Recognize that limitation is a created illusion. 4. Begin a journey toward freedom and abundance. It sets the tone for the rest of the book. You don't beat the money game. You walk away from it. Chapter 1. The Rules of the Game. The core purpose of Chapter 1. Chapter 1 exists to do one critical thing. Expose the invisible rules that control your relationship with money, effort, success, and limitation. Scheinfeld is not teaching money management here. He is teaching awareness. Until you see the game, you cannot leave it. The money game is not about money. Scheinfeld begins by making a shocking claim. The money game is not actually about money. Money is just the scoreboard. The real game is about struggle, scarcity, fear, control, self-worth, Survival. Money is only the symbol through which the game expresses itself. The game you never agreed to play. One of the most important ideas in this chapter. You never consciously chose this game. From childhood, you absorbed rules such as, money is hard to get. You must earn your worth. Life is a struggle. Security comes from money. If you don't work hard, you'll suffer. These rules were taught by parents, schools, religion, media, society, authority figures. Because everyone accepted them, they felt real and unquestionable. The game has rules, and they are absolute. Scheinfeld explains that every game must have rules, otherwise it collapses. The money game's rules are psychological, not written. Some of the core rules include: Rule 1. Money is scarce. There is never enough. This creates competition, anxiety, comparison, fear of loss. Scarcity keeps players desperate and compliant. Rule 2. You must struggle to deserve. Ease is suspicious. Effort equals worth. Suffering equals virtue. If money comes easily, you feel guilty, afraid it won't last, unworthy. This rule ensures constant striving. Rule 3. External circumstances control you. Your happiness depends on income, job, economy, government, other people. You're taught that power is outside you. Rule 4. Safety comes from money. Money becomes emotional security, identity, protection from fear. This rule ensures you never stop chasing it. Rule 5. You are separate and alone. You must compete, protect yourself, win at others' expense. Unity would end the game, so separation is enforced. Why the game feels so real. Scheinfeld explains that the money game is self-reinforcing. When you believe money is scarce, you act from fear. Fear creates stress. Stress creates problems. Problems prove scarcity is real. This creates a closed loop. The game appears real because everyone agrees to it. Evidence constantly reinforces it. You never question the starting assumptions. The biggest trap, trying to win the game. This is one of the most devastating insights in the chapter. The game cannot be won. You can earn more, invest better, hustle harder, become successful, but the rules still apply. Even wealthy people fear losing money, feel it's never enough, remain emotionally trapped. Winning the game only makes you a better prisoner. Why self-improvement doesn't free you. Scheinfeld explains that budgeting, hustling, financial planning, motivation technique are all strategies inside the game. They make you more efficient, more disciplined, more productive, but still trapped by the same rules. It's like rearranging furniture in a prison cell. The game requires your belief. This is crucial. The money game only exists because you believe in it. Not consciously, but deeply. Beliefs act like operating system code. They run automatically. They filter reality. They shape experience. As long as the beliefs remain unquestioned, the game continues. Awareness is the first crack. Chapter 1 does not ask you to change anything yet. It asks you to observe, notice, recognize. The moment you see the rules clearly, something shifts. A game loses power the instant you see it as a game. Why this chapter is uncomfortable. Scheinfeld knows this chapter can cause resistance, anger, confusion, disbelief, because it threatens identity, long-held beliefs, emotional security structures. Discomfort is a sign the rules are being exposed. The hidden promise of Chapter 1. Although no solutions are given yet, the promise is clear. If the game is created by rules, then it can be exited by changing relationship to those rules. Not by fighting, not by winning, but by stepping out of the agreement. What Chapter 1 really does. This chapter removes the illusion of inevitability, separates money from survival, exposes unconscious beliefs, prepares you for Phase 2 awareness, weakens the game's grip. It is the foundation of the entire book. One-sentence summary. Chapter 1 reveals that money problems are not financial problems. They're rule-based psychological agreements that can be seen, questioned, and ultimately left behind. Chapter 2. The 3 haunting questions. The purpose of Chapter 2. If Chapter 1 exposed the existence of the money game, Chapter 2 exposes its emotional grip. This chapter answers a crucial question. Why do people keep playing a game that makes them stressed, fearful, and unhappy, even when they are successful? The answer lies in three haunting questions that quietly dominate human thinking. What makes these questions haunting? Scheinfeld calls them haunting because they never fully go away. They resurface in moments of stress. They drive fear-based decisions. They shape behavior unconsciously. Most people don't realize these questions are running their lives. They appear as background anxiety, not clear thoughts. The three haunting questions. Scheinfeld identifies three universal, unspoken questions. Question 1. Am I going to be okay? The root of all financial fear. This is the most fundamental question. It appears as fear of not having enough money, fear of losing a job, fear of illness, aging, or failure, fear of the future. At its core, it is existential fear. Not will I be rich, but will I survive? How money hijacks this question. Society teaches you that money equals safety. Lack of money equals danger. So the question morphs into, will I be okay financially? Once money becomes linked to survival, fear becomes permanent. No amount of money ever answers the question completely. Why success doesn't silence it. Even wealthy people still ask, what if I lose it? What if it's not enough? What if something happens? The question remains unanswered because money was never the real issue. Question 2. Am I enough? The question of worth. This question operates beneath ambition, achievement, and comparison. It appears as needing approval, chasing status, measuring success, comparing yourself to others. Money becomes proof of worth. How the money game exploits this. The game teaches. More money equals more value. Success equals personal worth. Failure equals personal deficiency. So you try to answer, am I enough? With achievements, income, recognition, and possessions. But external validation never lasts. Why hustle culture exists? Constant striving is driven by this question. Even when goals are reached, satisfaction is temporary. A new benchmark appears. The question returns. The game survives because self-worth is never resolved inside it. Question 3. How do I control life so I don't get hurt? The illusion of control. This question comes from fear of loss, pain, uncertainty, chaos. People try to control life through planning, saving, insurance, rules, predictability. Money becomes a control mechanism. Why control never works? Life is inherently uncertain. No amount of money can guarantee safety, prevent loss, eliminate change. So the need for control becomes obsessive. The more you try to control, the more anxious you become. How the three questions work together. These questions form a closed psychological loop. Am I going to be okay? Fear. Am I enough? Striving. How do I control life? Obsession. Money becomes the false answer to all three. This keeps the money game alive. Why these questions never get answered. Scheinfeld's key insight. These questions cannot be answered inside the game because the game is built on fear. Fear keeps the questions alive. The questions justify the game. Trying to answer them with money is like pouring water into a leaking bucket. The shocking realization. The chapter leads to a profound realization. The questions themselves are the trap. They are based on false assumptions. That you are unsafe. That you are incomplete. That life is against you. Once you see this, the questions begin to lose power. Why most people avoid seeing this? Facing these questions feels dangerous because they define identity. They drive motivation. They give life structure. Without them, people fear losing direction, losing ambition, losing purpose. But what is really lost is fear-based living. What Chapter 2 is really doing. This chapter exposes fear as the engine of the money game, shows why money can never bring peace, reveals the emotional addiction to control, separates survival from worth, prepares you to release the questions themselves. It doesn't answer the questions yet. It makes you realize you don't need them. One-sentence summary. Chapter 2 reveals that the money game survives by exploiting three unconscious questions about safety, worth, and control. Questions that can never be answered with money and were never true to begin with. Why this chapter is a turning point. After this chapter, you can never look at money anxiety the same way again. You begin to see fear instead of facts, conditioning instead of reality, a game instead of truth. And once that happens, the exit becomes possible. Chapter 3. Leaving Hollywood in the dust. Why this chapter exists. If chapters 1 and 2 expose the money game and its emotional drivers, chapter 3 shows you how the illusion is manufactured. This chapter answers the question, why does the money game feel so real, convincing, and inescapable? Scheinfeld's answer is simple but radical. Because life is being experienced like a movie, and you've forgotten you're not the character on the screen. What Hollywood really means. Hollywood is not the film industry here. Hollywood is a metaphor for drama, storytelling, emotional immersion, identification with roles. Scheinfeld uses Hollywood to describe how reality is staged, narrated, dramatized, and emotionally charged, just like a movie. The money game survives because you are immersed in the story. You are living inside a movie. The chapter introduces a powerful idea. You experience life as if it were a film unfolding around you. In this movie, you have a role, job, identity, status. There is conflict, money problems, fear. There are villains, bills, bosses, economy. There is suspense, will I be okay? Because the story feels continuous and emotional, you forget it is a constructed narrative. Identification, the real trap. The problem is not the movie. The problem is identification. You believe you are the character. The story is you. The drama is real and personal. Once you identify with the character, every scene feels like survival. Why emotions keep you locked in. Hollywood movies use music, tension, high stakes, emotional payoff. Life does the same. Emotions, anchor belief, reinforce reality, prevent objectivity. Fear, hope, excitement, and anxiety make the story feel undeniably real. The money drama is the central plot. In most people's movie, money is the main storyline. Everything else revolves around it. Happiness depends on the next scene. This ensures constant engagement and tension. A calm, resolved story would end the movie. Why logic cannot break the spell. Scheinfeld explains that facts don't free you. Reason doesn't dissolve illusion. Positive thinking doesn't work. Because the issue is not belief, it's identification. You don't argue with a movie character. You stop believing you are one. Leaving Hollywood, what it really means. Leaving Hollywood does not mean ignoring life, avoiding responsibility, becoming passive. It means stepping out of emotional immersion, observing instead of reacting, watching the movie instead of being trapped inside it. This creates space. The observer position. The chapter introduces a critical shift, becoming the observer of the movie rather than the actor. From this position, drama loses intensity. Fear loosens its grip. Money problems stop defining identity. Nothing external changes yet, but everything internal does. Why this feels unnatural at first. Most people resist this idea because identity is built on roles. Drama gives life meaning. Letting go feels like emptiness. But what appears as emptiness is actually freedom from compulsive engagement. The power of disengagement. Scheinfeld emphasizes, you don't escape the money game by fighting it. You escape by withdrawing emotional investment. When you stop feeding the movie, scenes lose energy. Conflicts dissolve. The story collapses naturally. No effort is required. Why this chapter is so important. This chapter is the bridge between awareness, ch 1 to 2, transformation, ch 4 onward. It teaches how illusion is sustained and how it begins to dissolve. What chapter 3 actually does. This chapter breaks emotional identification, reveals life as a constructed narrative, separates awareness from experience, weakens fear without fixing anything, prepares you for phase 2 perception. It is subtle, but revolutionary. One-sentence summary. Chapter 3 reveals that the money game feels real because you are emotionally immersed in a dramatic movie, and freedom begins the moment you step out of the role and into the observer's seat. Why leaving Hollywood changes everything. Once you see life as a movie, money loses authority. Fear becomes optional. Control becomes unnecessary. You don't need to rewrite the script. You simply stop believing you are trapped inside it. Chapter 4. The White Knight comes riding in. Why this chapter is crucial. If Chapter 3 showed you that life feels like a movie, Chapter 4 reveals what happens when you try to escape the movie from inside the movie. This chapter answers the question, why do solutions, financial systems, gurus, strategies, spiritual teachings feel like salvation, yet never truly free us? Scheinfeld's answer, because the rescuer is part of the same illusion that created the problem. Who or what is the White Knight? The White Knight is anything you believe will rescue you from the money game. Examples include a new business idea, a mentor or guru, a financial strategy, a spiritual system, a big break, a law of attraction technique, a sudden windfall, a book, even this one, if misunderstood. The White Knight promises, follow me, and everything will finally be okay. Why the White Knight is so tempting. The White Knight appears right when fear peaks. You feel overwhelmed, trapped, desperate for certainty, ready for answers. The White Knight offers hope, direction, relief, a sense of control. This is emotionally intoxicating. The core illusion. The chapter exposes a brutal truth. Back-end index pointing right, any solution that tries to fix the money game accepts its rules as real. If you believe, you must escape financially, you must solve money, you must win the game, then you're still inside the game. The White Knight does not end the game. It keeps it alive. How the game reinvents itself. The money game is clever. When fear gets too intense, it introduces a savior, offers a breakthrough, creates renewed hope. This keeps you engaged. Without hope, the game would collapse. The hero's journey trap. Scheinfeld shows that many people unconsciously live a hero narrative. Struggle, sacrifice, perseverance, ultimate victory. This feels noble, but it's still a story. And stories require conflict to exist. Why spirituality can become a White Knight. This chapter is especially bold about spirituality. Even enlightenment can become a goal, a rescue, a future payoff. When spirituality is used to escape fear, it becomes another costume for the money game. The White Knight strengthens dependency. When you believe in a rescuer, you give away authority. You postpone peace. You remain incomplete for now. The promise is always, not yet, but soon. Soon never arrives. The subtle addiction to hope. Hope feels positive, but here it's dangerous. Why? Because hope implies something is wrong now. Fulfillment is elsewhere. You are not enough yet. Hope delays freedom. What real freedom is not. Scheinfeld is very clear. Freedom is not more money, better systems, smarter strategies, spiritual superiority. Those are upgrades inside the movie. What real freedom is? Freedom comes from seeing the rescuer as part of the illusion, dropping the need to be saved, ending the search. The moment you stop waiting for the White Knight, the game loses its final weapon. Why this feels terrifying. Letting go of the White Knight feels like abandonment, risk, loss of direction, because the ego believes, if I'm not being rescued, I'm doomed. But that belief is the trap. The quiet power of this chapter. This chapter doesn't give you a new solution. It removes your dependence on solutions. That's why it's unsettling and transformative. What Chapter 4 actually does. This chapter exposes false saviors, dismantles hope-based control, ends dependency on systems, reveals how solutions perpetuate fear, prepares you to step beyond the game entirely. One-sentence summary. Chapter 4 reveals that the White Knight, the promised solution, guru, or breakthrough, is not your escape from the money game, but its most seductive reinforcement. Why this chapter is a major turning point. After this chapter, You stop chasing fixes. You stop outsourcing power. You stop waiting for permission to be okay. You begin standing outside the game, not fighting inside it. Chapter 5. How Money Really Gets Created. Why this chapter is a shock. Up to this point, Scheinfeld has been exposing the money game, revealing emotional traps, dismantling false saviors. Now he does something radical. He removes money from the center of power entirely. This chapter answers the question: if money doesn't create security, control, or worth, then what actually creates money? The answer overturns everything you were taught. The lie you were taught about money. The traditional belief is work effort money, skill value money, time labor money. Scheinfeld calls this backward causation. He says, money is not the cause. Money is the effect. What money really is. Money is not power, security, value, energy. Even that is misleading. Money is a symbolic outcome. It is the byproduct of something deeper already happening. The core revelation. Scheinfeld's central claim in this chapter. Money is created by alignment with the game's rules, not by effort. But here's the twist. Those rules are illusory and contextual, not universal. Money shows up where the game allows it. The story supports it. The environment expects it. Money follows agreement, not truth. The movie set analogy. Scheinfeld brings back the Hollywood metaphor. Money is like props in a movie, costume pieces, script elements. They appear when the script requires them. Actors don't create props. The production does. Why some people always seem lucky. Some people appear to make money effortlessly, be in the right place, attract opportunity. It's not luck. They are less emotionally attached, less fearful, less controlling, less identified with scarcity. They flow with the script instead of fighting it. Fear blocks money, but not how you think. Fear doesn't block money because it's negative. Fear blocks money because it tightens identity. It locks attention. It reinforces separation. Money requires movement, not effort. Fear freezes movement. The myth of hard work. Scheinfeld dismantles the moral myth. If I work harder, I deserve more. Reality shows hard work often creates less money. Ease often creates more. Why? Because money responds to resonance, not struggle. Struggle signals resistance to the game's flow. Why money comes when you stop needing it. This is one of the most confronting ideas in the chapter. Money often appears when you stop chasing it. You stop fearing it. You stop defining yourself by it. Why? Because you've stopped feeding the money game with emotional energy. Money is a feedback mechanism. Money is not a reward. It's feedback. It reflects your relationship with the game, your emotional entanglement, your level of identification. When identification loosens, money becomes fluid. The illusion of creation. Scheinfeld is careful with language. You don't create money. Money appears, just like scenes in a movie appear when required. Trying to force money is like yelling at the screen. Why visualization and affirmations often fail. This chapter quietly dismantles common self-help practices. If you visualize money while needing it, fearing lack, trying to control outcomes, you reinforce the illusion of scarcity. Money does not respond to desire. It responds to detachment. The paradox. The chapter's great paradox. The less seriously you take money, the more easily it shows up. Because seriousness equals identification. Identification equals confinement. What this chapter is not saying. Very important. Scheinfeld is not saying, don't work, don't plan, don't earn, don't act. He is saying, stop believing money is the source. Stop worshiping effort. Stop equating struggle with value. Action still happens, but without desperation. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter removes money's authority, breaks the effort-reward illusion, reframes money as a side effect, disconnects survival from income, prepares you to operate beyond the game. One-sentence summary. Chapter 5 reveals that money is not created by effort, struggle, or worth, but appears as a byproduct of alignment with the game's flow and loses its power the moment you stop needing it. Why this chapter changes everything. After this chapter, Money no longer feels heavy. Fear loses leverage. You stop chasing outcomes. You stop blaming yourself. You begin to see money for what it is. A prop, not the producer. Chapter 6. Mirror. Mirror on the wall. Why this chapter is uncomfortable. Up to now, the book has shown you. The money game is an illusion. Fear fuels it. Hope and solutions keep it alive. Money itself is a prop. Now Scheinfeld turns the spotlight directly at you. This chapter answers the question. If the money game isn't external, where is it actually happening? The answer is unsettling. The money game is being reflected back to you by your own internal patterns. The meaning of mirror, mirror on the wall. The title refers to a simple but radical idea. Life mirrors your inner relationship with fear, worth, and control. Not in a mystical, you attract what you think sense, but in a structural, perceptual sense. Your experience reflects how you are oriented to reality. The mirror is not punishment. Scheinfeld is careful here. Life is not teaching you lessons, rewarding or punishing you, judging your worth. Life is simply showing you what you are holding is real. The mirror is neutral. The external world as feedback. Your money situation reflects what you believe is necessary for safety, where you seek control, how you define okay, where you feel incomplete, not as a judgment, but as feedback. Why problems persist? Problems don't persist because you're unlucky. You're not trying hard enough. The system is broken. They persist because you keep responding to the reflection instead of seeing the mirror. Fixing reflections does nothing. Why fixing circumstances never works. Scheinfeld emphasizes, if you try to solve money by earning more, solve fear by saving more, solve worth by achieving more, you strengthen the mirror. The reflection must change after the inner orientation shifts, not before. The illusion of cause and effect. The mind believes, if I fix the outside, the inside will follow. Scheinfeld reverses this. The inside defines the outside experience. This is not mystical. It's perceptual. How identity shapes reflection. Your identity answers silent questions like, who am I? What must I do to be okay? What am I missing? Life then arranges scenes consistent with that identity. Not because life wants to, but because that's the lens you're looking through. Why blame is pointless. Blame, whether of self or others, assumes someone caused the problem. Something went wrong. But if life is a mirror, no one is wrong. Nothing is broken. There is only feedback being misunderstood. The role of resistance. Resistance intensifies reflection. When you resist, fear grows. Problems repeat. Money feels heavier. Why? Because resistance confirms the belief. This matters for my survival. The mirror responds accordingly. The most radical insight of the chapter. Here is the chapter's core insight. You do not need to change yourself. You need to stop believing the reflection defines you. The mirror loses power when you stop reacting to it. Why self-improvement can backfire. Trying to fix yourself implies you are broken. You are not enough. You must earn peace. That belief becomes the new mirror. Scheinfeld quietly dismantles self-improvement as another trap. The shift from reaction to recognition. Freedom begins when you notice patterns without emotion. Observe without judgment. Stop personalizing outcomes. This is not indifference, it's clarity. Why the mirror changes automatically. When identification drops, fear dissolves, control relaxes, worth becomes irrelevant. The mirror has nothing left to reflect. Reality rearranges without effort. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter ends victimhood, ends blame, removes self-judgment, dissolves struggle at the root, prepares you for conscious participation. One sentence summary. Chapter 6 reveals that the money game is not happening out there, but is being reflected back to you through life as a mirror of your inner relationship with fear, control, and worth. Why this chapter is a major turning point. After this chapter, you stop fighting life. You stop fixing yourself. You stop personalizing money. You start recognizing patterns instead of reacting to them. That recognition is the beginning of real freedom. Chapter 7. turning on your X-ray vision. Why this chapter is a major shift. Up to chapter 6, you were shown. The money game exists. Fear fuels it. Solutions reinforce it. Money is a prop. Life mirrors your inner orientation. Now comes the crucial question. If all this is true, how do I actually live differently? Chapter 7 answers that by introducing a new way of seeing, what Scheinfeld calls X-ray vision. What X-ray vision really means. X-ray vision is not mystical. It is perceptual clarity. It means seeing through appearances, recognizing illusion while it's happening, not being emotionally hypnotized by situations. You still see the scene. You just no longer mistake it for ultimate reality. The problem this chapter solves. Before X-ray vision, you react first, understand later. Fear feels urgent and personal. Money situations feel dangerous. After X-ray vision, you see the structure beneath the drama. Emotional charge drops. The game loses its grip. The core insight. Scheinfeld's key insight here is, the money game operates invisibly because it is assumed to be real. X-ray vision exposes its mechanics while they are operating. What you're learning to see through. With X-ray vision, you see through. Fear narratives. Urgency. This must be fixed now thinking. Worth-based pressure. Survival drama. These stop feeling absolute. They become signals, not commands. The difference between seeing and believing. You still experience bills, deadlines, choices, consequences, but you no longer believe they define your safety or value. This distinction changes everything. How the mind normally works. Normally, the mind interprets a situation as dangerous, reacts emotionally, builds a story, identifies with the outcome. X-ray vision interrupts this before step 2, the moment of choice. Scheinfeld emphasizes a subtle moment. The instant you notice fear without acting on it. That moment is freedom. You don't suppress fear. You see it. Seeing dissolves compulsion. Why awareness weakens the game. The money game requires unconscious belief, emotional investment, automatic reaction. Awareness removes all three. A game can't run if no one believes the rules are real. Seeing the script. With X-ray vision, you begin to notice predictable patterns, repeating emotional loops, familiar dramas. You realize, I've seen this scene before. That recognition breaks identification. The collapse of urgency. Urgency is the game's strongest weapon. X-ray vision reveals. Urgency is emotional, not factual. Nothing truly vital is at risk. Life continues regardless of the scene. Urgency dissolves when seen clearly. Why this is not detachment or avoidance. Important clarification. X-ray vision does not mean ignoring responsibilities, avoiding action, becoming passive. You still act, but without panic. Action becomes clean, not reactive. The end of personalization. One of the most liberating effects. Problems stop feeling personal. You stop thinking, this is happening to me. This means something about my worth. I've failed again. The mirror loses emotional power. How X-ray vision develops. Scheinfeld makes it clear. You don't force X-ray vision. It develops naturally when illusions are exposed. Identification weakens. Observation replaces reaction. Clarity is a byproduct, not a technique. Why the game begins to unravel. When you consistently see fear as fear, drama as drama, money as a prop, the game stops feeding itself. Scenes resolve faster. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. Pressure evaporates. The most important result. X-ray vision restores choice. You choose how seriously to take a situation, whether to engage emotionally, whether to believe the story. That choice was previously unavailable. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter gives you real-time awareness, breaks automatic reactions, dissolves urgency and fear, separates perception from identity, makes freedom practical. One-sentence summary. Chapter 7 teaches you how to see through the money game as it unfolds, using awareness, not effort, to dissolve fear, urgency, and emotional entanglement in real time. Why this chapter is so powerful. This is the chapter where freedom becomes usable, not philosophical, not future-based, not dependent on change. You start seeing clearly now, and once you can see through the game, you can never be fully trapped in it again. Chapter 8. The Treasure Hunt of the Century. Why this chapter exists. After Chapter 7, you now have awareness of the money game, the ability to see through it in real time, reduced fear and urgency. The natural question becomes, if I'm not chasing money, security, or control anymore, what am I actually doing? Chapter 8 answers that with a metaphor. You are on a treasure hunt, but not the one you were told about. The false treasure hunt. Society teaches a very specific hunt. The treasure is money. The map is hard work. The obstacles are sacrifice and struggle. The reward is safety and happiness. Scheinfeld calls this a decoy hunt. It keeps you busy, but never fulfilled. Why the old treasure never satisfies. Even when people win financially, anxiety remains. Fear returns. Emptiness appears. Why? Because the treasure was never what was promised. Money cannot deliver. Identity, safety, completion, meaning, the real treasure. Scheinfeld reveals the real treasure. Freedom from the money game itself. Not freedom through money. Freedom from needing it to define your life. What makes this the treasure hunt of the century? This hunt is different because the treasure is already here. You don't travel anywhere. You don't earn it. You don't deserve it. You simply recognize it. The hidden location. The treasure is hidden in plain sight. In fear reactions. In emotional triggers. In money stress. In control impulses. Each trigger is a clue. Why problems are clues, not obstacles. Scheinfeld reframes problems completely. Instead of asking, how do I fix this? You ask, what illusion is being revealed here? Every discomfort points to a belief being questioned, an identity loosening, a layer of the game dissolving. Why this hunt is inverted. Traditional treasure hunts. Move outward. Accumulate. Compete. This one moves inward. Releases. Observes. You don't collect clues. You drop beliefs. The role of curiosity. Curiosity replaces effort. Instead of panic, you cultivate interest, openness, observation. Curiosity neutralizes fear. Fear cannot survive investigation. Why this hunt has no losers. You can't fail this treasure hunt because there's no timeline, no comparison, no competition, no right way. Every experience counts. The paradox of reward. As you disengage from the money game, life becomes lighter. Money often becomes easier. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. But these are side effects, not the goal. The real treasure is internal freedom. Why the hunt feels subtle. This chapter can feel anticlimactic because there's no big breakthrough moment. No fireworks. No external victory. Freedom arrives quietly. It feels like relief, space, ease, neutrality. And then you realize the pressure is gone. The end of chasing. The hunt ends a chase. When chasing stops, peace appears. Clarity returns. Life unfolds naturally. You stop trying to get there. You discover you were never lost. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter replaces striving with curiosity, reframes problems as clues, ends the search for external reward, centers freedom as the real treasure, dissolves urgency around success. One-sentence summary. Chapter 8 reveals that the greatest treasure is not money or success, but freedom from the need to chase them. And every challenge in life is a clue leading you there. Why this chapter changes your orientation to life. After this chapter, problems feel informative, not threatening. Money loses emotional charge. Life becomes an exploration, not a test. You stop asking, how do I win? And start living. Free. Please subscribe to my channel, share the video, and also like it. Be part of this humble journey. We have a story to tell. Brain popcorn, here we go. Chapter 9. Jumping into the driver's seat. Why this chapter is a turning point. Up to Chapter 8, you've learned to recognize the money game. See through fear and urgency. Treat life as a mirror. View challenges as clues. Stop chasing false treasure. Now the natural question arises. If I'm no longer reacting to the game, who is actually in charge now? Chapter 9 answers. You are, but not in the way you were taught. What the driver's seat really means. This chapter is not about control in the traditional sense. It does not mean forcing outcomes, micromanaging life, making everything go your way. Instead, it means no longer being driven by fear, conditioning, or automatic reactions. You're not controlling the road. You're choosing how to respond to it. The old driver, fear. Before this chapter, fear was driving. Fear decided what mattered, what was urgent, what needed fixing, what defined success. Even when you thought you were choosing, fear was at the wheel. Why people think they're already in control. Most people believe, I make my own decisions. I choose my actions. I'm responsible for my life. Scheinfeld exposes a deeper truth. Reacting is not choosing. If fear decides first, choice never happened. The shift from reaction to intent. Jumping into the driver's seat means responding instead of reacting, acting without emotional compulsion, moving without urgency. This is subtle but powerful. What real choice looks like. Real choice feels calm, neutral, unforced, clean. There is no internal pressure. No, I must do this now or else. Why this feels uncomfortable at first. When fear stops driving, there's silence, there's space, there's uncertainty. The mind panics. If I'm not pushing, nothing will happen. But life does not stop. It reorganizes, letting life drive the mechanics. Scheinfeld introduces an important distinction. You choose orientation. Life handles logistics. You don't manage outcomes. You manage relationship to outcomes. Why effort drops, but results don't. Many fear that letting go means laziness, failure, loss of ambition. Instead, effort becomes efficient. Action becomes precise. Results often improve. Because resistance is gone. The end of forcing. Forcing is fear in disguise. When you're in the driver's seat, you act when action is natural. You wait when waiting is clear. You stop manufacturing urgency. Life stops feeling like a struggle. Money from the driver's seat. Money behaves differently when fear isn't driving. You notice better decisions, less self-sabotage, fewer desperate moves, more clarity around opportunity. Money becomes practical, not emotional. Why this is not going with the flow. Important clarification. This is not passivity. It's engaged neutrality. You're present. You're aware. You're responsive, but you're not entangled. The deepest insight of the chapter. Here's the chapter's quiet core. You don't need to control life to participate fully in it. Control was never power. It was fear, try to feel safe. How the game starts losing its grip when you consistently choose. Awareness over urgency. Curiosity over panic. Presence over projection. The money game runs out of leverage. Nothing dramatic happens. The pressure just fades. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter restores genuine choice, removes fear from decision-making, ends compulsive effort, separates action from anxiety, establishes true inner authority. One-sentence summary. Chapter 9 shows that real power comes not from controlling life, but from stepping out of fear-driven reaction and choosing calmly from awareness, finally putting you in the driver's seat. Why this chapter changes how you live. After this chapter, decisions feel lighter. Pressure decreases. Life feels cooperative instead of hostile. Money becomes a tool, not a threat. You're no longer trying to win the game. You're driving, and the road no longer feels dangerous. Chapter 10. Putting your foot on the gas. Why this chapter exists. After Chapter 9, a very natural concern arises. If I stop pushing, striving, and forcing, will my life slow down or fall apart? Chapter 10 answers with a surprising reversal. Real momentum begins only after fear gets out of the driver's seat. This chapter explains what aligned action looks like when it's no longer fueled by anxiety. Why gas sounds like effort but isn't. In the money game, putting your foot on the gas means hustling, grinding, forcing outcomes, pushing past fear. Scheinfeld completely redefines this. Here, Gas means allowing movement instead of resisting it. The old gas pedal, fear. Before busting loose, action is driven by panic, scarcity, comparison, survival urgency. This kind of action feels exhausting because you're fighting imagined danger. You're trying to outrun fear. You're pushing against life. That's not momentum, it's friction. Why most action is actually braking. This is one of the chapter's most counterintuitive insights. Fear-based effort is not acceleration, it's braking. Why? Because fear tightens perception, narrows options, blocks intuition, causes overthinking. So the harder you push, the slower things move. The new gas pedal, permission. Once you're in the driver's seat, acceleration comes from permission to act, permission to wait, permission to change direction, permission to do less or more. There's no internal argument. Action flows naturally. What aligned action feels like. Scheinfeld describes this kind of action as clean, simple, obvious, unforced. There's no dramatic build-up, no emotional charge, no sense of I must do this to be okay. Why this feels like doing more with less. When fear is gone, you stop overcomplicating. You stop second-guessing. You stop sabotaging clarity. So even small actions have outsized impact. It feels like life is cooperating because resistance has ended. The end of trying. This chapter quietly dismantles the idea of trying. Trying implies internal conflict, doubt, pressure, resistance. Putting your foot on the gas happens after trying ends. Action is no longer an effort. It's a response. Why motivation becomes irrelevant. Most people rely on motivation because they're pushing against fear. They don't actually want what they're doing. They're acting for survival, not alignment. In this chapter's state, motivation isn't needed. Discipline feels natural. Follow-through happens automatically. Money and the new gas pedal. Money responds differently here. You notice clearer opportunities, better timing, fewer desperate decisions, more intuitive yes/no responses. Money stops feeling heavy. It becomes logistical. Why this is not recklessness. Important clarification. Putting your foot on the gas does not mean risky impulses, blind leaps, ignoring consequences. Fearless is not equal to careless. You're actually more precise because perception isn't distorted. The collapse of procrastination. Procrastination disappears because there's nothing to resist. There's no fear to avoid. There's no pressure to escape. You act when action is natural. You rest when rest is natural. Life begins to move faster. Ironically, life accelerates when you stop pushing. Why? Because you're no longer blocking flow. You're not fighting reality. You're not creating friction. Momentum becomes effortless. The quiet confidence of this chapter. This chapter doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like ease, trust, simplicity, momentum without stress. That's how you know it's real. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter redefines action, separates movement from effort, ends hustle mentality, restores natural momentum, aligns action with clarity. One sentence summary. Chapter 10 reveals that true acceleration in life doesn't come from pushing harder, but from removing fear-based resistance and allowing clear, natural action to unfold. Why this chapter completes the shift. After this chapter, action feels lighter, progress feels smoother, life feels responsive instead of resistant. Money becomes easier without obsession. You're no longer forcing motion. You're finally moving. Chapter 11, Busting Loose. Why this chapter is the heart of the book. Everything so far has been preparation. Chapters 1 to 4 exposed the illusion. Chapters 5 to 6 removed money's authority. Chapters 7 to 8 taught you how to see. Chapters 9 to 10 showed how to act without fear. Now comes the question that matters most. What does it actually mean to be free from the money game? Chapter 11 answers. Freedom is not escaping the game. It's no longer being inside it psychologically. What busting loose really means. Busting loose does not mean quitting your job, rejecting money, becoming reckless, living without responsibility. It means the money game no longer defines who you are. how safe you are, or how worthy you are. Money becomes contextual. Life becomes primary. Why freedom is quiet. Many expect freedom to feel like excitement, triumph, emotional highs. Scheinfeld dismantles this expectation. Freedom feels like neutrality, ease, space, relief. The drama disappears. The moment the game loses power. The game loses power when money problems no longer feel personal. Fear no longer feels urgent. Outcomes no longer define identity. Nothing external has to change first. The internal shift is enough. Why the game cannot follow you. The money game requires fear, identification, belief in rules. Once those are gone, the game has no access point. It cannot operate without your participation. The end of if only thinking. Busting loose ends thoughts like, if only I had more money. If only this worked out. If only I were safer. Those thoughts vanish because you no longer believe something external completes you. You're already okay. Why life still includes challenges. Important clarification. Busting loose does not eliminate problems, choices, consequences, uncertainty. What disappears is emotional suffering, fear-based meaning, identity collapse. Challenges become logistical, not existential. Money after busting loose. Money no longer feels like a verdict on your worth, a measure of safety, a source of identity. It becomes a tool, a resource, a moving variable. You engage with it without reverence or fear. Why this is not indifference. Busting loose is not apathy. You still care, act, create, participate, but you're no longer attached to outcomes. Engagement replaces obsession. The end of the inner tug-of-war. Before, you wanted freedom but feared loss. You wanted money but resented needing it. You wanted peace but chased security. After busting loose, inner conflict dissolves. Decisions feel simple. Energy stops leaking. Why you stopped seeking validation. Validation was needed only when worth was external. Safety was conditional. Identity was unstable. Once those illusions dissolve, approval becomes irrelevant. Comparison loses meaning. Self-judgment fades. The most subtle insight of the chapter. Here is the quiet truth at the core of Chapter 11. You were never trapped. You were participating. Freedom comes from seeing that participation is optional. Why this chapter feels anticlimactic. Many readers miss this chapter's power because it doesn't promise transformation. It doesn't sell enlightenment. It doesn't offer a technique. It simply describes the absence of struggle. And the mind expects fireworks. What changes without effort? After busting loose, decisions clarify themselves. Stress responses weaken. Opportunities arise naturally. Life feels cooperative. Not because you fixed anything, but because you stopped fighting. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter ends identification with money, dissolves fear-based identity, normalizes freedom, removes drama from success, anchors peace as default. One sentence summary. Chapter 11 reveals that true freedom is not achieving financial victory, but stepping out of the psychological grip of the money game so completely that it no longer defines your life. Why this is the true climax. This chapter doesn't end the story. It ends a need for one. You're no longer chasing an ending. You're living. Chapter 12. Postcards from the Road. Why this chapter exists. After Chapter 11, a quiet but important doubt may arise. Okay, but what does this look like in real life? Chapter 12 answers that question. This chapter is not philosophy. It is evidence. Scheinfeld offers postcards, snapshots from life lived after the money game loses its grip. What postcard from the road means. A postcard is short, informal, personal, observational. This chapter doesn't explain freedom. It shows it. Each postcard is a glimpse of ordinary situations, familiar challenges, daily decisions, seen through a new orientation. Why the road matters. The road symbolizes ongoing life, movement without destination, living without a finish line. Freedom is not a place you arrive at. It's a way of traveling. The absence of drama. One of the first things Scheinfeld emphasizes. Nothing spectacular happens. No sudden enlightenment. No permanent bliss. No perfect life. Instead, life continues. Problems still appear. Choices still matter. What's gone is the emotional weight. How money situations feel now. Money issues still arise, but they feel manageable, neutral, temporary. There is no panic narrative, no identity collapse. Money becomes a circumstance, not a verdict. The end of catastrophic thinking. Before busting loose, every issue felt like a threat. Every setback felt dangerous. Every decision felt loaded. After, the mind stops catastrophizing. Worst-case scenarios lose credibility. The future stops looming. Life feels present, not ominous. Ordinary moments become easier. Scheinfeld highlights small shifts. Conversations feel lighter. Decisions feel simpler. Waiting feels natural. Silence feels comfortable. Nothing changed externally, but resistance is gone. How action happens on the road. Action now emerges naturally, feels obvious, requires little deliberation. You don't ask, is this safe enough? You ask, is this clear? Clarity replaces fear as the guide. Why trust replaces control? This chapter reveals a quiet trust. Not trust in outcomes. Not blind faith. Not optimism. But trust in your ability to respond when life happens. Control was never about safety. It was about avoiding uncertainty. Now, uncertainty feels navigable. The loss of urgency. Urgency dissolves almost completely. Things still matter, but nothing feels like now or never. Time relaxes. Life stops rushing you. The end of self-surveillance. Before, you monitored progress. You judged performance. You evaluated worth. After, self-monitoring fades. Comparison disappears. Inner commentary quiets. You live more. You analyze less. Why this chapter feels human. This chapter is deeply reassuring because it doesn't idealize freedom. It doesn't promise perfection. It doesn't elevate you above others. Freedom looks normal, and that's the point. The most important message of the chapter. Here it is. Freedom integrates in a life quietly, not dramatically. If it feels dramatic, it's still part of the game. Why this chapter prevents backsliding. Many people glimpse freedom, then return to fear because they expect fireworks. They doubt subtlety. They mistrust ease. This chapter says, if it feels ordinary, you're doing it right. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter normalizes freedom, removes spiritual fantasy, grounds insight in daily life, shows stability without control, makes busting loose livable. One sentence summary. Chapter 12 shows that life after busting loose is not dramatic or perfect, but quietly easier, calmer, and more natural, like traveling without fear of the road. Why this chapter is deeply reassuring. After this chapter, you realize you don't need to protect freedom. You don't need to maintain it. You don't need to perform it. You simply live, and life handles the rest. Chapter 13. Playing without limits or restrictions. Why this chapter comes after postcards from the road. Chapter 12 showed you that freedom feels ordinary and livable. Now a new question naturally arises. If I'm no longer constrained by fear, rules, or survival pressure, how do I actually engage with life? Chapter 13 answers. Life becomes play, not in the childish sense, but in the free, creative, unconfined sense. What playing really means here. Scheinfeld is not talking about irresponsibility, escapism, avoiding consequences. Playing means engaging with life without fear-based limits, internal rules, or self-imposed restrictions. You're no longer playing to win or survive. You're simply participating. The invisible rules most people live by. Before busting loose, life is governed by silent rules like, I must be practical. I can't afford to fail. I should be careful. I shouldn't want too much. I must justify my choices. These rules are rarely questioned. They are inherited from society, family, culture, fear. Why these rules were never real. Scheinfeld reveals something radical. Most limits are not external. They are internal agreements. They feel real because they were adopted early. They were reinforced by fear. They were never examined. Once fear dissolves, the rules lose authority. The difference between freedom and recklessness. This chapter makes a critical distinction. Playing without limits does not mean ignoring consequences, acting impulsively, rejecting structure. It means you no longer restrict yourself out of fear, guilt, or imagined danger. Discernment remains. Fear does not. Why possibility expands naturally. When limits dissolve, imagination reawakens. Curiosity replaces caution. Creativity flows. You begin to ask, what if? Instead of, what if something goes wrong? The collapse of should. One of the biggest shifts in this chapter. The word should loses power. You stop asking, what should I do? What's the safe choice? What's expected of me? You start asking, what feels true? What's interesting? What wants to happen? How money fits into limitless play. Money no longer defines what's possible, what's allowed, what's realistic. You still consider logistics, but they're not gatekeepers. Money becomes a variable, not a boundary. Why risk feels different now. Risk previously meant threat to survival, threat to identity, threat to worth. Now risk is simply uncertainty with curiosity. You're no longer protecting an identity that must be safe. The return of natural confidence. Confidence here is not bravado. It's quiet. It comes from no longer fearing mistakes, no longer fearing judgment, no longer fearing outcomes. When nothing defines your worth, confidence becomes automatic. The end of self-censorship. Before, you edited desires. You muted impulses. You constrained expression. After, expression flows. Creativity feels safe. Desire isn't dangerous. You don't need permission to explore. Why life starts feeling larger. This chapter often produces a felt sense of expansion. Life feels wider, more open, less boxed in. Not because the world changed, but because internal walls dissolved. Why this is called playing. Play has these qualities. No fixed outcome. No rigid rules. No fear of mistakes. Presence in the moment. Scheinfeld suggests, this is the natural human state before fear taught us otherwise. What this chapter is really doing. This chapter removes internal ceilings, ends fear-based self-restriction, restores creativity and curiosity, reframes life as exploration, makes freedom expressive, not passive. One-sentence summary. Chapter 13 reveals that once the money game loses its grip, life becomes an open field of exploration, where limits dissolve, rules lose authority, and engagement becomes playful rather than fearful. Why this chapter is liberating. After this chapter, you stop asking permission from life. You stop shrinking possibilities. You stop living cautiously. You don't become reckless. You become unrestricted. Chapter 14, The Dialogues. Why this chapter exists. Up to now, the book has exposed the money game, dissolved fear-based identity, opened limitless play. But a critical question remains. What happens when fear shows up again? Chapter 14 answers with precision. Freedom is not maintained by insight. It is maintained by how you respond internally when fear appears. What the dialogues are. The dialogues are structured inner conversations, not affirmations, not positive thinking, not mental control. They're a direct engagement with fear at the moment it arises. Why fear still appears after busting loose. Scheinfeld makes this clear. Fear is not a failure. Fear is not a regression. Fear appears because old conditioning still exists. The brain still predicts danger. The money game tries to reassert itself. The difference is how you relate to fear. The two voices identified. Every dialogue involves two distinct perspectives. One, the fear voice, speaks urgently, predicts disaster, focuses on lack, demands control. This voice believes survival is at stake. Two, the higher perspective, calm, grounded, neutral, non-reactive. This voice sees fear as a signal, not a command. Why naming the voices matters. When fear is unnamed, it feels like you. Naming it creates separation. You're no longer inside fear. You are observing it. That alone weakens its grip. The purpose of the dialogue. The dialogue does not try to eliminate fear, argue with fear, replace fear with positivity. It aims to reorient attention away from the money game's rules. How the dialogue works, step by step. Step 1. Fear appears. A trigger arises. Money worry, relationship tension, uncertainty, decision pressure. The body tightens. Thoughts accelerate. Step 2. You pause. This pause is critical. You do not react. You do not solve. You acknowledge. Fear is present. Step 3. You speak to fear. You address it directly. Not with judgment. Not with dismissal. With calm authority. Step 4. You shift perspective. You remind yourself. Fear is not danger. Fear is conditioning. Fear is not predictive. This shifts power away from fear. Step 5. You return a presence. You don't force calm. You allow it. The nervous system settles naturally. Why logic alone doesn't work. Scheinfeld explains. Fear is not logical. It is physiological and conditioned. Arguing with fear keeps you inside the game. Dialoguing steps outside it. Why compassion is essential. Fear thrives on resistance. When you fight it, it intensifies. It becomes louder. It demands attention. Compassion dissolves fear because it removes threat. It removes urgency. It removes opposition. The end of internal warfare. Before the dialogues, you battled fear. You suppressed emotion. You forced confidence. After, fear is met. Fear is heard. Fear relaxes. Internal conflict ends. Why this tool is so powerful. The dialogues work immediately. Require no belief. Adapt to any situation. Don't rely on outcomes. They restore internal sovereignty. What changes over time? With repeated use. Fear arises less often. Fear resolves faster. The body trusts you. Calm becomes default. Freedom stabilizes. Why this chapter is the backbone of the book. Without this chapter, insights fade. Fear reasserts control. Old patterns return. This chapter ensures boosting les become permanent. What this chapter is really teaching. At its core, fear is not an enemy. Fear is not truth. Fear is a conditioned voice. You can meet it without obeying it. One sentence summary. Chapter 14 gives you the internal method for meeting fear directly, compassionately, and effectively, ensuring that freedom survives real life rather than collapsing under pressure. Why this chapter is transformational. After this chapter, you no longer fear fear. You no longer react automatically. You no longer need control. You remain centered, regardless of circumstances. Chapter 15, The Invitations. Why this is the final chapter. This chapter is not about learning something new. It is about being invited into a different way of living. Scheinfeld ends the book here because freedom cannot be forced. Awakening cannot be demanded. Busting loose is not an obligation. It must be chosen. What the invitations are. The invitations are not instructions, rules, technique, requirements. They're open offers from life itself. Each invitation says, in essence, you are welcome to live beyond fear, if you choose. Why invitations, not commands? The money game is built on obligation, pressure, survival rules, musts and shoulds. Freedom cannot use the same language. If freedom came as a command, it would recreate the game. So it comes as an invitation. The central truth of this chapter. Here is the core revelation. Backhand index pointing right, nothing needs to change for you to accept the invitation. You do not need more money, more confidence, more clarity, more healing. You're already eligible. The first invitation, to stop fighting life. This invitation asks, what if you stopped resisting what is? Resistance is the engine of the money game. Without resistance, fear loses fuel. Identity relaxes. Control dissolves. Acceptance here does not mean passivity. It means ending the inner war. The invitation to trust without proof. The money game demands evidence before trust. This invitation reverses that order. Trust first. Experience follows. Not blind faith, but willingness to proceed without guarantees. The invitation to be where you are. Most suffering comes from being mentally ahead, being emotionally behind, being internally elsewhere. This invitation is radical in its simplicity. Be here. Presence alone dissolves much of the game. The invitation to live without a story. The money game survives through narrative. I'm behind. I must catch up. This shouldn't be happening. This invitation says, what if you stopped narrating your life? Without story, fear has no structure. Problems lose drama. Reality feels lighter. The invitation to let life lead. Before, you planned aggressively. You controlled outcomes. You pushed for security. Now, you listen. You respond. You allow direction to emerge. Leadership shifts from fear to intuition. The invitation to drop identity. The money game attaches worth to success, failure, roles, achievement. This invitation asks, what if you stop being someone? Not disappearing, but releasing the need to maintain an image. The invitation to feel fully. Fear taught you to numb discomfort, avoid sadness, suppress uncertainty. This invitation welcomes all sensation. Feeling fully restores aliveness, clarity, authentic response. Emotion becomes movement, not threat. The invitation to participate, not manage. Life under the money game feels like management, managing risk, managing image, managing outcomes. This invitation invites participation, curiosity instead of control, engagement instead of vigilance. Life becomes a dance, not a project. Why nothing dramatic happens. Scheinfeld emphasizes, no fireworks, no finale awakening, no permanent high. The invitation leads to quiet freedom. Freedom feels stable, ordinary, natural, and that's how you know it's real. Why the invitations are ongoing. You don't accept them once. You accept them, moment by moment, choice by choice, fear by fear. Freedom is not a state. It is a relationship with life. What happens if you decline the invitation? Nothing bad. Life continues, but the money game remains active. The invitation waits patiently. It never expires. What this chapter is really saying, at its deepest level, this chapter says, you were never trapped. You were never broken. You were never behind. You were always free to choose. One sentence summary. Chapter 15 presents freedom not as a goal to achieve, but as an open invitation to live without fear, resistance, identity, or control, available at any moment you choose to accept it. Why this ending is perfect. The book does not end with certainty. It ends with openness. Because real freedom does not close anything. It opens everything. Appendix. Adding fuel to the fire. Why this appendix exists. After Chapter 15, a subtle risk appears. Backhand index pointing right, understanding without momentum. You may feel clear, calm, and free, but old habits can quietly reassert themselves if insight isn't energized. This appendix exists to keep freedom alive, deepen embodiment, strengthen the shift from insight to lived reality. It adds fuel to ensure the fire keeps burning. What fuel means here? Fuel is not effort. Fuel is not discipline. Fuel is not motivation. Fuel is continual reorientation away from fear and back into presence. Freedom needs attention, not force. Why the money game slowly creeps back. Scheinfeld explains that the money game returns not because you failed, you forgot, you did it wrong, but because conditioning is deep. Society constantly reinforces fear. The brain defaults to control. Without fuel, freedom cools into memory. The purpose of the practices. The appendix introduces reminders, exercises, and reflections that reactivate clarity, interrupt unconscious fear loops, recenter awareness. They are not work. They are reentry points. Fuel number 1, conscious remembrance. This is the most important fuel. You repeatedly remember. Fear is not truth. Money is not safety. Control is not protection. Not intellectually, but experientially. Each remembrance weakens the game. Fuel number 2, revisiting the dialogues. The dialogues are not a one-time tool. Scheinfeld encourages using them regularly, using them gently, using them whenever tension appears. They keep fear from regaining authority. Fuel number 3, noticing subtle fear. The money game rarely returns loudly. It returns subtly. Mild urgency, quiet comparison, slight contraction, small self-doubt. Catching fear early prevents escalation. Awareness is preventative medicine. Fuel number 4, allowing discomfort without meaning. This appendix reinforces a key teaching. Discomfort does not mean danger. When discomfort arises, don't fix it, don't analyze it, don't assign meaning. Let move. This stars the game. Fuel number 5, returning to the body. Freedom is not maintained in thought. It is maintained through breath, sensation, presence. The body anchors you in now, where the money game has no power. Fuel number 6, letting go of progress tracking. The appendix warns against a subtle trap. Am I more free today than yesterday? Tracking progress recreates the game. Freedom is not cumulative. It's immediate. Each moment is complete. Fuel number 7, living, not practicing. Scheinfeld emphasizes, this is not a lifestyle program. This is not a discipline. You don't practice freedom. You live. And freedom expresses itself naturally. Fuel number 8, returning again and again. There is no final arrival. You will forget, tighten, react, re-interfere. This is not failure. Each return strengthens trust in yourself. The most important reminder in the appendix. Here it is. You don't protect freedom. Freedom protects you. The more you relax, the more stable it becomes. Why this appendix is quietly powerful. It does not add complexity. It removes urgency. It reassures you that nothing is required. Nothing is missing. Nothing is broken. Freedom is self-sustaining when not interfered with. What this appendix is really teaching. At its core, freedom deepens through awareness. Fear dissolves through attention. Presence is the ultimate fuel. Life itself supports freedom. One sentence summary. The appendix shows how to keep freedom alive by gently returning to awareness, presence, and compassion, allowing the money game to lose power naturally over time. Why this is the perfect ending. The book does not end with a command. It ends with a reminder. Because freedom doesn't need instructions. It needs space.